Jean-Sylvain Perrig, welcome on UBP TV. Confidence seems to be back on track in the US, but not in Europe due to slow growth and political uncertainties with Russia. In this context, what are your macroeconomic views?
The world economy is expected to pick up from the current level in terms of activity, led mainly by the US. It's true that the Eurozone is pretty weak currently. The periphery is doing better from very depressed levels, but the core is a bit under pressure, especially France. In the case of Germany, we expect growth to pick up in Q3 and Q4. Inflation currently is not a problem, except maybe in Europe, because inflation is getting closer and closer to zero. Therefore, we expect the ECB to announce in September its first quantitative easing program. And we hope that it will help to bolster confidence and hopefully the credit cycle. It's true that in the case of Europe, the tensions between Ukraine and Russia are weighing on sentiment. And it's not good for growth because it refrains from investing and from consuming. And in that kind of situation, you never know what could happen. And maybe we have a political crisis down the road. The rest of the world should do, in terms of economic activity, a bit better than currently, so slight pickup as well.
Very loose monetary policies will continue to bolster risky assets. Do you remain bullish on equities?
Yes, we remain bullish on equities. As you said, the Fed is expected to end its quantitative easing program, so contrary to what is going to do the ECB. But generally speaking, rates are going to stay very low because the Federal Reserve is afraid to shock the markets, and the bond market especially. So they will be very careful and will manage expectations. Therefore, rates will stay very low for a long period of time still. So it makes equities very appealing compared to bonds, and especially government bonds. That's why we remain positive on equities. Regarding specificities on equities, we still like the US. The US should do better than the rest of the world because that's where you have the best earnings revisions, where you have the main activity in terms of M&A, and where you have the biggest amount of share buybacks, which is very helpful for the market. Within the equity markets, we still like the digitization theme, and that is especially tech companies, because many of these tech companies are growing very fast, multiples of the kind of growth you can have in terms of GDP growth. And we still think that this company will deserve a premium compared to the rest of the market. We also like some specific areas like Asia, Japan, and China.
And contrary to what was expected, emerging markets have performed well. Can you explain why?
So there are three main reasons for that good performance. First, contrary to what we thought, interest rates in the US didn't go up, they went down. And that made emerging assets much more appealing compared to US assets. And secondly, we started the year at very depressed levels. Last year, we had a lot of flows getting out of these emerging markets. Now we have a lot of flows getting back in. And thirdly, there are, for many countries, a lot of hopes that structural reforms will be implemented in order to boost governance, and therefore, in the end, investments, consumption, and then growth. So which would be very good for earnings. Should it happen, the trend could continue for sure.
Jean-Sylvain, do you think the US dollar will continue to strengthen against the euro?
We think that the US dollar will continue to strengthen against the euro. And we know as well that it is a very consensual view. But nevertheless, the deficits are shrinking in the US quite fast, budget and trade, reducing the need for external financing. And then if you take the yield curve in the US and you compare to the yield curve in Germany, the spreads between the two are at decade highs. Therefore, you can, as a European investor, you can buy US bonds, which are yielding more than German bonds, within an appreciating currency. Therefore, it's a no-brainer. So flows should continue to go to the US dollar.
Jean-Sylvain Perrig, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.